Hello, my name's Tom Carhill. It's the 7th of May 2014. I just want to make a quick video. This one probably will be quick because they're not normally. And it's about Lord McAlipine. Now, whilst he was still alive, I realised from seeing this Scallywag magazine about him, accusing him of being a paedophile, being very specific about who he'd raped, people with, actual allegations, where he'd done it, affidavits, etc. I knew that he'd done it. I also knew, due to Carter Ruck's involvement with the case and the Sally Burko psyop to cover it up with the false accusation, which he described in his book, which is called like the New Machiavelli, which Maggie Thatcher was very keen to endorse, and her best friend Jimmy Savile, etc., etc. Who used to Christmas with her 11 out of 11 years that she was in power. I knew that he was a paedophile, right? And I also knew about him collecting paedophilic pictures of children because I'd seen it. Somebody else had put the link together. It wasn't like I came up with this myself. But you see, again, with all of these things, you've got to do what you can when you can to sort of you pile more weight onto the scales, just to put pressure on. Like, I'll give you an example. One thing I'd do, and I think it's a good idea. Unfortunately, I didn't use this account very much, but I changed my eBay address to because they locked me out on my other account, to Lord _ McAlipine _ is _ a paedophile. So you see, that only went out to about 2 or 3 people. But you see, the point is that if every time one of these things happened, everybody just carpet bombs the internet, only when but like when it's obvious, I think people aren't doing enough to get the word out, because with the McAlipine thing, there's only a very small amount of the public. If you literally told them, look at this, he is a paedophile, he even collects paedophilic art, even the thick as fuck British public, never underestimate the stupidity of the British public, that's what I always say, but even the thick as fuck English public, the most ignorant people in the entire world, who think they know everything and know nothing, even they would feel compelled to look that up. At least 5% of them would anyway. And 95% of them, if you went on at them enough, you could get them to believe that you were talking sense. So, if you hit go for the big ticket items, that's what I think. Anyway, this is the point, right? So I'm not making this because he's dead and I'm like so you can look at my other videos, you can see I've made 3 or 4 about him when he was still alive. And I was happy to do so because I absolutely knew he wouldn't come near me. I even wrote to his lawyers before the court case, Carter Ruck. I wrote to Adam Tudor. Adam Tudor was not his lawyer on that occasion, but he was working for Carter Ruck, and I don't like Adam Tudor. He knows that I know he's a dickhead, and he works for the government. I'm absolutely sure they're an intelligence front for the government, Carter Ruck are. So their involvement spelt out his guilt very, very quickly. They also represent Kate and Jerry McCann, the ones who murdered their child, and or murdered or killed through gross manslaughter their child, then hid the body, and have caused the biggest fuss over a relatively minor thing in the history of fusses. Anyway, and they're still going to continuing to keep the fuss, and that's another very interesting one, because we just don't know why he's doing that. Because you would have thought that they'd have had the sense to just come clean, and because they're clearly being protected by the establishment, why didn't they just say, we've lost any chance of finding a little girl now, we've just lost the chance? Or, there's evidence she died in and around the apartment, we think somebody came in, killed her in the apartment and ran away with her. Why didn't they just say that? Why didn't they say a burglar came into the flat, killed her, then ran away? Because we've got evidence of a cadaver anyway. They didn't. There's loads of ways they could have buried that. So there's a good reason why they're keeping this ridiculous distraction news story about Madeleine McCann going. And as equally this massive police investigation and the need to constantly report on what they're actually doing every single day of the week, and talking all these silly stories about what they're up to next, and they're keeping changing the suspects. So that's very suspicious. But you see, it's suspicious. This isn't just like an incompetent cover-up. There's a reason why they're keeping that floating, and I don't believe it is purely distraction news. I believe it's mainly distraction news, but not purely. Anyway, right, I'll get on with it. Lord McAlipine was accused of being a paedophile about 15 years ago, 15, 16 years ago in a paper. Didn't do anything about it. Continued to collect paedophilic art. So obviously he thought he was protected, and he was protected. Then he and Derek Lord flicked the country when people started to say they were paedophiles this time. And been very specific. They didn't just generally say they generally were paedophiles or they thought they were because they hanged around with other dodgy people who were paedophiles. It was very specific. It involved actual people that they'd raped and had to go, including things like about hospital visits that have been caused by the damage they'd caused to them, all sorts of stuff. And that of course some of these people have been murdered since that time in very suspicious circumstances that were all put down to suicides or like accidents, like fires in their houses or getting hanged. Anyway, so all of a sudden, I mean, he's in pretty good health for his age. I reckon he's in pretty good health. Now, obviously, if you think, oh shit, it's all coming down on me now, like this is the end, I'm not going to be able to get away with it. They're going to have to throw me to the, they're going to throw me to the authorities this time. You might have a heart attack and die. Yeah, it could happen. I'm absolutely sure it could happen. But the point is that didn't happen. So he flipped the country, just like Derek Lord had. He's effectively in pedo exile, right? And there'll be lots of other people to follow him. I'm sure there will be. I'm sure there'll be like half of the Labour cabinet will also be following him, and half the BBC in good due course if people do their jobs. But that's all dependent on the British public doing their job and making this happen. The point is it really possible? The timing. I mean, I know he's an old man, and an old man can die at any time, but he's not just an old man. He's an aristocrat who's got infinite money, and he's basically completely got away with it. He's gone off to Italy, and he's staying there, and pretty much no one in Italy will know much about it, or if they know, they'll think he's got away with it, and they'll think he's been proven innocent by good old Sally Bercow, the paedophile protector, and they'll probably think, oh, he's just been persecuted and he just wants a quiet life, poor old man. That's probably what they'll think. A lot of them will anyway, because they'll be just as naive in lots of other countries. Well, not as naive, but there won't be so many people paying attention. But then again, you think, so it's not like he's going to be under massive stress every day, I wouldn't imagine, because he's already kind of got away with it. And this is where I just don't think he's dead. I think it's very unlikely. I mean, he could be dead, but what I'm trying to say is I think 90% chance he's the type of... It's not about how long the person's got a capability of living, it's the fact that rich old people live a lot longer, normally. Not all of them, but the chance of him dying straight after that thing, or a year after, doesn't really make sense to me. I think it would last longer. And on top of that, maybe this was said at the time, but surely if he had bad health or failing health, he would have said, oh, my health's terrible, maybe if he had to have a stay in hospital, that would have actually featured during that trial, but it never did so far as I know, not trial, I mean hearing against Sally Bercow instead of against him for being a pedo. Anyway, so I'd be interested to hear what people think about it, because I also want to, I haven't been in England for a bit, and I didn't realise that Peaches Geldof is allegedly dead as well, and she just dropped dead. But she had heroin, but she didn't, but she did, but she didn't. This typical old hint that she's got heroin, then sort of retract it as though she hasn't, and then it turns into a 25-year-old just died for absolutely no reason, and it's just going to go down as a suicide or something, like an accident. Anyway, so I've been Tom Cahill. The date is the 7th of the 5th, 2014. I'll be interested to know what you hear. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about it, because it just doesn't ring true to me, and I just don't buy the whole thing. I just think it just sounds like nonsense.